Hey everybody, my name's Colin Ledbetter. This is the Built Different podcast. In studio with me, I have Greg Schaefer. I've known Greg for a little bit. He's quite a character, so I'm excited for you guys to watch this and get to meet him. I'll let Greg introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer. I've been a St. Louis City policeman for about 15 years.
Greg, let's talk a little bit about. Well, here let's start here. So you've been with the city for 15 years. What did you do prior to law enforcement?
I did accounting, which was miserable.
That sounds like a pretty big change.
Well, the big thing for me was I was so unhappy there that I just wanted something that was completely different.
Absolutely
I found
different.
it. I found it quickly.
Yeah. So did you start off on nights? Because you work nights.
Yeah.
Did you start off in the 6th district on nights, or did you jump around the department a little bit?
I jumped around the department a little bit, but I was on nights straight out of the academy whenever I was on training. Like, it was my very first shift. And I'm just going to go into this story because I still tell it because it's funny.
Yeah.
So I'm a brand new policeman. I don't know what I'm doing. We go to the gas station. Very first thing we do is I go into the bathroom. I take my gun belt off. I leave it way too close to the door. And the stall door.
Yeah.
And another policeman runs in there and takes it.
That's what I figured.
and I just sat in that stall for 15 minutes because I didn't even have like the guy training me's phone number to tell him like, hey man, someone stole my gun. So I just sat.
You don't know what's on the other side of the door. Like, it's just safer to ride this one out.
And finally, after about 10 to 15 minutes, my FTO, the guy training me, came in there and he's like, Greg,
you can come out now. It's safe.
It was a giant joke on you. I know you don't know what to tell me, but it's fine. Yeah. And I was like, oh, thanks, man.
That's hilarious.
Because I was just sitting there. I was like, I'm just going to call and quit from here. I'm just going to call the station and quit from exactly where I'm at.
That's hilarious. So you've been to other districts then?
I've bounced around a couple places.
Okay. What was your favorite district to work in?
Well, 6th is home.
Yeah.
It's North City. It's Baden, Walnut Park, DeVille.
The fun stuff, yeah. Good places to eat and all that.
Yeah, ever since the Hardee's closed down at Kimball and North Broadway, it's been downhill from there.
Yeah.
Those were good times.
So this will kind of piggyback off of that story you just told a little bit. What did you learn early on in the job as a young police officer? Obviously, when you're using the facilities, not to put your gun belt too close to the door.
Yeah, definitely keep it closer to the toilet itself. Just listen. I mean, that's
a big part of it.
The number one thing is listen.
Yeah. I've talked to, I'm sure you understand this, but being in my position, I go to these fundraisers, I go to these events, and you get these old cops that are like, oh yeah, come talk to my young probie or something like that. And he's like, yeah, give him some advice. I'm like, just listen to him, like there's nothing that you're going to be able to tell an old guy who's worked 6th district nights for how many years that he doesn't already know or hasn't already experienced.
Yeah, there's the technology and stuff is really the stuff where change sucks, man.
Yeah.
Change sucks.
Yes.
Especially like when you don't want it to happen.
Yes.
So that's the stuff that
definitely the technology, like even in my job now, I'm working in a service department at a car dealership, and I've got 20, 30 year mechanics, and they're like, I don't know what to do with some of this stuff. You get a brand new vehicle in, and it can tell you what kind of yogurt you're going to have tomorrow or something. Just crazy stuff that they have in these cars now. So definitely, I feel like that's a maneuver for the policing world or anyone, really.
Yeah, like when there was a guy with like, I think he retired with like 37, 38 years on the department whenever I came out. And he was insane. I mean, he was wore tinfoil hats. You'd give him gift cards for Christmas. He would cut them up and put them in because he didn't want people tracking him.
Right.
Wouldn't give people his cell phone number, write down his address on things. Like, just out of his mind.
Yeah.
Like aliens were after him or something. I don't know. But like, the older I get, the longer I get on, I'm like, oh man, that's what the young guys think of me.
Oh, that is me. Oh.
Oh man, that is me. That is embarrassing.
Yeah.
On every level, I totally get that.
Yeah, I totally understand that now. Yeah.
And you get like that because through time, as time happens, like, there was a norm. There was a social norm. There's a department norm. There's a norm in society. That, like, the older you get, man, you just don't care that those norms change. So you just seem crazy.
Yeah. Yep. I totally understand that.
The societal norms and, like, me as whatever so, like, my very first detail was the St. Patrick's Day Parade. And I was a young policeman, had no clue what I was doing. It was my first detail. I didn't know where to park. I didn't know anything. I still don't know where to park, and I still don't know a whole lot. But when we're down there, I don't want to say his name because it's a name that people would actually know, not just department people, but public figure-wise.
Oh, yeah.
And he was my supervisor, but he had like 63 or 64. And he would wear like Hawaiian shirts into work, and he was just counting down the days till retirement. And so, like, we're on this detail, and we're supposed to be like really visible. And he's like, yeah, guys, we're not going to stand outside in the rain.
Yeah. We're
going to go to Denny's.
Yep.
And like, I ordered funnel cake fries and a hot chocolate with extra whipped cream. And this dude looked at me and he looked dead at the waitress and he'll have a black coffee. You're not bringing him out a hot chocolate with extra whipped cream. He'll have a black coffee.
How old were you then?
25.
Yeah.
25, to where, like, I realized that he was just disgusted to be with me in public because of what I ordered. Just absolutely disgusted. I was like, well, I really like whipped cream in my hot chocolate. It's cold outside. But now I've become that guy.
So kind of change directions here a little bit. I like to ask this question, and I always get different answers all across the board, but would you recommend this job to a family member or a friend?
No. I mean,
that's usually where it ends. Yep.
My kids, I want to do better in life than me. So,
yeah,
if they become a policeman, I'm a failure's father.
Yeah.
Like, just basic story. Most of my childhood friends are felons, so they can't really be around guns. But that's not to say there's not really great parts of it. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. It's not. Yeah.
On any level, it's just not worth it.
I've got a little unique perspective because
I bet you do.
I was basically
killed.
Well, and forced out of the job. I tried so hard to come back. I just kept trying, and then it literally took my neurologist sitting down and saying, "Listen, man, I've tried for you multiple different times. You're gonna have to bite the bullet." And
not literally,
which he did. He didn't say that. But in my head, that's the terminology. Probably bad terminology. But if he did say that, I'd probably be like, that was a really good joke. But he's just like, we're gonna have to do something. We can keep trying, but you're just not there. And at that point, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, like, what am I gonna do now? Well, now, that I have, what, 2 years out of policing, I look at it and I'm like I talk to guys and I'm like, oh my God. Like, I would be putting up with that. Like, like every time something comes out and you're like, oh yeah, yeah. I mean, like, I hate that idea, but I'll put up with it. Just one more thing for the job. And you're like, you know what? If they do one more thing, I think I'll walk away. But it's going to take one more thing. And then they put out the next thing and you're like, oh yeah, we can do it. It's fine.
Well, I don't know if Lucas Roethlisberger's name's ever been brought up on here.
It probably has.
But with you and Lucas, and I love Lucas.
Yeah.
But with you and Lucas is someone I consider a dear friend.
Yes.
A goofball, but a dear friend.
He's a goofball.
I think the job was great for you guys because I think it made you recover harder. Mm-hmm. And I think it was something that gave you... I think you guys are in a better situation now because that was dangled out in front of you that there's a possibility for return. Or even Joe Heyman, who I don't know if I'm sure that name probably hasn't been brought up. Yeah. But Joe was shot, I want to say 7 or 8 times. I might be miscounting. At Natural Bridge and Kings Highway, or Natural Bridge and Grand at the gas station lot there. It would have been 2010, 11. And he was like, he's doing great now. But like part of the reason he was doing great is because he wanted to come back to work.
Gave you the drive.
Yeah, he rehabbed harder. I'm sure you rehabbed harder. I know Lucas did because all 3 of you guys are morons and you wanted to come back do this job again.
Yeah.
That's...
It gave you your drive. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
I think after what happened to all 3 of you, and you guys all have similar mentalities of like you wanted to get back to work, you wanted to go back out there and push it, and you didn't want this person who shot you guys to win. Like that's really what this comes down to at the end of the day. Yeah. Like you feel like some dude took something from you and you didn't want them to let them win. And I get that and I respect the hell out of it. But like, dude, it really helped all of you guys be in a better mental place, better physical place. Like
definitely.
All of you guys recovered better because of that drive and that mentality. It's admirable. Yeah. Maybe not with Luke. I mean, he's still too nuts. But with Joe,
well, admirable. I mean, he did it twice. I mean, bad dude. Yeah. But yeah, no, I definitely would agree that drive definitely. But you look at it from the outside box and you're like, why?
Dude, it's like it. And I used to do just, I mean, everyone knows I used to do reckless stuff. That's not some like, that's not some like secret, you know, like everyone who knows how I patrolled the adjective to be used would be reckless. And I just don't know why I did that now. Like at the end of the day, like, there's a sense of invincibility with you, but like, I don't know why I ever had that sense of invincibility. Yeah.
Like, I totally agree with that too. Yeah. And then to think that, you were just one bad mistake or one bad call away and that your supervisor's not going to have your back. Some do. Some are great. Some are awesome. But then you get other ones that are just like,
I was in... I don't know how much I should go into this, but we're amongst friends. It's me, you, Sam. We're all friends here. I was in a pretty highly publicized situation where a guy resisted arrest and I was attached to it. My lieutenant at the time couldn't have been more supportive and great to me. Yeah. Like if he acted different, and my captain at the time, Captain Kuntz, who's retired, Ed Kuntz, because there's 2 of them, who's retired at the time. They're both incredibly supportive. And, man, it was just something to where, like, it was a gray area. Like, I certainly, the video looked terrible, but when you hear the story behind it, everyone's like, well, what was this guy supposed to do? Like, you know what I mean? Like, like that, it was one of those type of things. And without my lieutenant I mean, I think I would have been criminally prosecuted under Kim Gardner, but like without my lieutenant and my captain, if things would have just been slightly different,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I would have quit. I mean, I'm sure I would have got through all of that and then quit.
Yeah, and it's almost, I mean, nowadays with policing, you're already prosecuted by the media before you even get to that point. You're already condemned by your decision the next day.
When that specific situation, like, there's a video, and it's probably about a minute long, the resisting or whatever you want to call it, us affecting an arrest. And it cuts on like 40 seconds into it, where you're like,
Yeah,
we didn't see him
do anything.
We didn't see him piss in the refrigerator, fondle himself in front of his grandkids. Now it's just, now it's just me looking like a,
fighting him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
now it's just me looks like a barbarian.
Yeah.
Like that's, and he threw the first punch at me. Like that was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about perspective, and obviously the perspective we have to prove without a doubt 100% of the time where a mind frame was at, the perspective, everything like that. Whereas the criminal just gets the, oh, hey, he said that he wasn't doing that, so he wasn't doing that.
Yeah, it's weird. And that really, like, because it was something, I used to be really close to a high school teacher of mine who's a great lady. And I would talk to her periodically. She still is a great lady. And she's not dead. I don't know why I said was. But we just don't talk very much anymore. But I was talking to her, and she was asking me how work was going. I was explaining that, and she was like, "Oh, I heard about that on NPR." And I was like, "Oh,
Oh
no, that's not what I wanted to hear." You heard about it where?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that even with, Nate and Griffin and I's shooting, body cameras were pretty much a new thing at that time. And the fact that 3 officers did not have their body cameras on at the time of the shooting was, that would have been up in riots, someone dies, everything, there would have been riots all over if I hadn't have been as bad as I was.
Sure.
I truly believe that. So, it just would have been, immediately we would have been prosecuted. Oh, their body cameras weren't on. Bad news.
Sure.
What people don't know, Nate and I left an interview with DEI that morning. My body camera was off because of that interview. I got down to the car, and Nate goes, "Hey, there's a homicide car here." And I said, "Let's go." And we went. Of course, in my head, driving all that way up there, I'm not going to say, "Oh, yeah, let me pull my body camera on and turn it back on." I was thinking, hey, let's get to this homicide car and figure out what's going on. The other side of it was Nate and Griffin had worked overtime that night. Their body cameras weren't charged because they worked overtime that night. We were at the end of our shift. But, the public wouldn't have heard that if I hadn't have been as bad off as I was. So I think that sheds a pretty good light on,
that your body cameras have a 6-hour charge and you have an 8-hour shift.
That is an issue.
Do we think that could be an issue at some point?
Well, yeah, it should have been an issue immediately whenever we got it.
There's some great people who work down at body worn camera. Like a lot of people. Well, I don't really know anyone down there now. A couple of them just got promoted who I'd consider friends. And but when you tell them like, "Hey man, my camera doesn't stay charged for full shift," they're like, "Yeah, it does."
Yeah.
I'm like,
no,
it doesn't. Not if I'm on a scene for an hour and a half and it's on. Like it does. It's like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, bring a charger for the car. No, I don't think I am. That seems ridiculous. You don't give me equipment that.
Hopefully they get that fixed, because I feel like they're coming up on that term with.
Well, I have a new one, so I was like one of the first people with a new one because an incident I had earlier in the year. They just gave me a whole new body camera. But
Yeah.
that one's, dude, it's, the battery life's better. Everything else about it's worse.
Terrible.
I mean, it's just roughly the size of
Yeah.
a MacBook. It's very functional.
It's crazy. Let's talk about, I like to get into this a little bit. I like to do best and worst times on the job. You don't have to go in that order. You can go worst or best or however you want to do that.
Well, I mean, best times are always with the guys. I mean, that's always. And I've been very, very lucky where I've had probably 3 different squads throughout my career.
Right.
Where I had 6, 7 guys who, on each one of those squads, I still consider friends.
Right.
And who I still keep up to date with. I mean, we have one squad. I had a squad, I don't know, about 5 years ago now, man. And everyone on it was just so, like, we text in a group text message thread still 200 times a week together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, it's very close. We still go out and celebrate each other's stuff. And
Right.
one time when we were on that squad, we had a new supervisor who's a great guy, who's one of my favorite people in the world. New supervisor, though. And he absolutely hated administrative stuff. And our squad had created a ton of administrative stuff for him that week. Just a ton. And it was a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And then he drove his Jeep to work that day. And he was complaining about how he couldn't leave because he was supposed to go home early. He had scheduled time off to go home early, but he couldn't because we just created so much work for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I made everyone go outside and start taking pictures in his Jeep. And started sending them to him, posing in his Jeep with him, without him there. And he just texted me. He's like, "What is your problem? Why do you think this is funny? Why are you doing this to me?" Because it was funny.
Right. Absolutely.
And he would find it funny now, but
Now, at the time, he was probably really ticked off, but now it's funny.
now he would find it funny, not so much then. I'll tell you what, man. Honestly, I mean, I'll go into 3 different things for the worst stuff. Dave Lee, when Dave died, Dave and I were friends.
Terrible. Yeah.
That was tough. I was friends with Mike. I was friends with Kate Alex.
Yeah.
But Dave didn't have a reckless bone in his body. Dave was such a great guy.
Yeah.
And Dave treated everyone with so much respect that the last person in the world who should die doing this job is a guy who does everything carefully,
Mm-hmm.
who treats everyone well, who no one has a bad thing to say about.
No.
That one, and him having kids, that one messed me up.
Yeah.
That one messed me up a lot mentally. And then the hardest shift I ever had was with you. You don't know this,
Uh-oh.
but while your ass was passed out, I sat with you quite a few nights.
Yeah.
While you were in the hospital.
Yeah.
And man, the first few weeks, man, I'm sure Kayla's told you, but the first few weeks was tough because I would just be sitting there and you'd randomly move up and start trying to yank shit out of your face.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if I could touch you, if I could put pressure on you.
Put me in a chokehold.
I didn't know at what point I'm doing more harm than good. And it would be for 15 seconds and you'd stop and lay back down. And I'm like, do I tell a nurse?
Not sure if you had a stroke.
Yeah, I was dead serious. I was just I have no clue how to handle any of this. And Barnes did a fantastic job with you, and everyone was very lucky. But Barnes should have had a sitter in there with you. They knew a policeman would be in there.
Yeah.
So they shorted a sitter, and the policeman's me, and I don't know what I'm doing. like the policeman's like scared, staring at you like this. Like, oh no, like oh no, he's gonna die while I'm in this room, and it's gonna be my fault. And I had a call, and I had probably about 3 years on, maybe 2, when the call came out, and it was in Walnut Park. I don't know how detailed I should get in the call, but I won't say names or anything, so it should be cool. I couldn't tell you their names if I wanted to anyway. But like, I had a call in Walnut Park, and it was like 5 to 7 kids in this house. It's a 2-bedroom house, 3-bedroom house. Mom was struggling. She was like an overnight CNA somewhere at some nursing home. But she was a nice lady. She was struggling, trying to do the best she could. Dad, on the other hand, was a dope fiend who was stealing from people. And man, they kick in, do a home invasion. And like, listen to the girl, the oldest one, who's probably 9, 10 at the time. Shouldn't have been there watching her younger siblings. Like, walk up and be like, because they kept on like asking where this dope was and asking where the money was. If you walked in that house, you knew there was neither.
Yeah.
All the dope that he had went up his nose. Like, it is what it is. It's poverty. It's drugs. But like the one of the guys put a gun to one of the little kids' heads. It was like, if you don't tell me where your dad hides it, I'm gonna kill him. So she like came out with her like piggy bank to try to like save your little brother's life. I'm just like, fuck. How do you like rebound from that? Because like,
yeah, there's
my kids are mad when like their video games get disconnected from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they're like, I was winning my game of Fortnite and it got disconnected. Like, what? How am I living in these conditions? And I'm just like, well, it's like, because the girl was sweet, Dad was terrible and terrible human, but like, Mom was trying. She was doing everything she could. She's just in such a bad position. She put herself behind an 8 ball, and I don't even know how you. I don't know how you get through that. Like that one, I thought about that. I still think about it. Like wondering where those kids are and.
Yeah. Brings up kind of a point that I always have in my head. Where I live, where I grew up at, it's very. I don't want to say closed-minded, but a lot of people don't know how bad it actually is just an hour away from them.
Sure.
If that makes sense. They're always like, oh, you'll hear people that go to church, I'm like, oh, I'm going on a mission trip across the seas. I'm like, well, I can tell you, you can drive an hour, and give some money to these people and they will be tickled to death. I said,
have you ever been to Ruskin and Harney?
Yeah, exactly. Like it, and I just don't think that people understand that stuff exists in America. Just the ultimate stroke, like right now, right at this second, I guarantee you someone in North St. Louis is either getting victimized, struggling with a dope addiction, or something.
Sure.
And it's just very sad. Very sad to say. And, us as officers being the ones patrolling it and stuff, you just see so much of it. You see just like consistency, like all the time, like, oh, great, we're going to do this or we're doing that, and it's just constant and always there, throughout the community and through the police department, especially on the north side. I just had to throw that.
It's a cyclical thing, man.
Yeah.
And I had a guy who I talked to a lot. He's a lieutenant now. He's important now, but when he was a patrolman, I talked to him a lot. I still talk to him, but he was a really hard charging dude, and then he wasn't. And he was like, what's the point? He's like, like,
it's a revolving cycle.
When you're at Beacon and Prange, and someone's selling dope, and you arrest them with, half ounce of dope, and then the next day, his son's out there doing the same thing, because that's how they have to make money to survive. It's like there's
It almost
it's just a cycle that isn't going to change. Like you
never will.
like there's you know, poverty can't be like, you're not going to police someone out of poverty.
No.
You know, that's
No.
you know, that's what it comes down to, is they would still rather run from the police and all of that than,
It's a culture.
yeah, then, and make sure there's still food to eat, you know. And I mean, like, it's just a revolving door and a cycle, and
Yeah.
it's something, I mean, no one's figured out how to fix it.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a way. I mean, well, Greg, I mean, if we sit here and figured it out right now, I'd tell you we'd be, you know, we'd probably be president or whatever, but you just can't, you can't figure that out. There is generational, you know, just generations of culture and stuff that, I mean, you'll see 16-year-old kids having kids of their own.
Sure.
And that's, you know, by the end of it, you know, great grandma is only 40 and you've got, you know, 4 lines there already, because that's just how it works. You know, they have kids, they use drugs, and it's just crazy because it's a cycle.
Yeah, and it's a hard one to break.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up not too far from where I work. I grew up in Ferguson.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, West Florissant, if you stay on, it's only about 3.5 miles from,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you've been in Ferguson
Yeah.
once. I
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
But it's not far from West. And I run into people who I grew up with.
Right.
It used to be pretty frequently, but it's not pretty frequently anymore.
Right.
But,
People have changed and stuff. Yeah.
or they're dead,
Yeah.
you know, and,
Yeah.
you know, and like, mental health stuff's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I got a real funny story from a guy who I grew up with. It was on a basketball team I was on. And there's 2 white guys on the basketball team, me and a guy named Chris.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the black guys never took time to differentiate.
Mm-hmm.
Chris and Greg.
Yep.
So, like, I became, like, used to answering to Chris.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
So, like, me and my old partner, who's in homicide now, we were on a call, and this guy was crazy. He is crazy. And he was like, "Hey, Chris, it's good to see you again." And I'm talking to him, because I've known him for 20 years.
Right.
And at the end of it, my partner's like, that guy kept calling you Chris, but he knew you. And I was like, "Yeah, man, we're the 2 white kids on the basketball team. It's me and a guy named Chris." You just, you know, he got called Greg a lot. I got called Chris a lot. We just answer for each other. It's cool, man.
Yeah.
It's love. You know,
Yeah.
he didn't mean anything by it, but, like, he was a great dude growing up, and I'm sure, I don't even know if he's alive anymore, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I don't know if it was addiction or mental health, man. He was just a shell of himself, you know. And he was one of those guys who has, like, neighborhood orders of protection against him,
Yeah.
which is possibly the most unconstitutional thing God's ever created.
Yeah.
And no one has a problem against it because all these people are crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So any judge will sign it because look at who it is.
Yeah.
And he was like banned from, like, 6 neighborhoods. I don't even know how that's possible. He was.
Jeez.
It was like a very, like yeah. You read his Hoover. I mean, he was arrested like 95 times. And I was probably 26, 27. He was a year older than me.
Mm-hmm.
So he was 27, 28. And I'm sitting there, and, like, the people at the Justice Center made fun of him. And I had to, like, stop him at the Justice Center. I'm like, he's actually a really good guy, man. He had mental health issues. He lost his mind. Like, you know, this is just what life is for him.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people like that up there. I mean, a lot that just, you know, lost their way and haven't figured it out.
Yeah. I mean, with the lack of resources for mental health,
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, when you call the police at 11 o'clock at night because you can't deal with your loved one, I don't really have a solution either, man. If they're not listening to you,
Yeah.
guess what? They don't even like me. So
Yeah.
if you're not getting through to them, guess what? I ain't either.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely nothing to help people at 11 o'clock at night. You know, that's
No.
at least in the city of St. Louis. You know, there might
Yeah.
be other places, but you know, like when you're like, oh, he needs to get mentally checked out. And I'm like, yeah, it's 11:45. What's your idea? What's your solution to this?
Yeah.
Because I've got none.
Yeah. I can take him to Lee's. We can go get some chicken or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, like
I'm lost.
yeah. Before body cameras, I would have dropped him off in Granite City. I don't know what we do now. Like,
Yeah.
what's your solution
Yeah.
to this?
Yeah.
Like, this is, yeah.
Turn gears a little bit again. Kind of wrap it up. We had kind of talked a little bit before off camera about riots and stuff like that. You've got a unique perspective. You've kind of followed St. Louis up through their riots pretty much.
Yeah. Well, I've probably got one of the most unique perspectives on that because I grew up in Ferguson,
Yeah.
roughly a mile and a half from where all the Mike Brown stuff started.
Yeah.
I understand the community of Ferguson. Grandma still lives there. I've been at every single major riot in the last at least 10 years, maybe longer. I was a part of it every step of the way. Before we didn't have equipment, I was a part of it. My cousin, so after the first set of riots in August, which we were a part of I was a part of for an extended period of time, 12-hour days. Mm-hmm. And I still lived in the city at the time. And I remember watching it on the news because I was actually off work the day the riots happened. Mm-hmm. And like it was watching it live, and it was wild. The first night of it all, and I remember because there was, I don't really understand how it started on a Sunday night, the Mike Brown stuff, but it did. And I remember watching it on the news and just like not understanding the scope of it, not understanding that it was just a businesses on major streets or anything like that. Mm-hmm. My grandma lives in a pretty nice little subdivision cut back into Ferguson where there's not really issues. Mm-hmm. But I remember just loading up my assault rifle and I was like, well, I'm going to my grandma's house. If someone comes, I'll meet them. Yeah. Like we'll have a standoff at the door. Right. You know, like one of those type of things. But then from that point forward, I don't know. I think we worked 12-hour days, like 24, 25 straight days, 12-hour plus days then. Which was cool, paid off student loans. That round. But then the Vonderant Myers one happened, which was the South Grand one. Mm-hmm. And that shooting happened, and that kind of became like the calling part for it in the city. And I remember when we were assembled to go out to the county, and I remember when people were going to I remember they decided that they were going to make the Arsenal Grand area, like the central part of it in the city for the Vonderant Myers one. And we had at the time, I was one of the more trained ones on the department at civil disobedience. And so they asked who was trained, and I, like a dumbass, I raised my hand. And they just give me a shield. Yeah. I have nothing else. And my daughter goes to Catholic school. I'm really religious. Mm-hmm. I think it's part of what keeps you grounded. Just a belief in something. You know, not saying my belief's right. I'm just saying if you don't have a belief in something, I think life's depressing and there's really not a lot.
No direction.
Yeah. And I remember being out on Kings Highway and having nuns tell me how terrible of a human I am for being a cop. And just being like, man, this is not what I thought work was going to be today. And then I hear one guy go, look at that dumbass. He's got his sign upside, he's got his shield upside down. And then I'm like, wait, my grips aren't right on this.
Oh, no.
Because there's like 8 of us in a row.
He's right.
And I'm like, oh, man, I'm the dumbass. But at that point, you know, like, it's a spite thing. Like, he's 100% right.
Yeah.
And I am a dumbass. But I can't turn the shield around and let him know that I heard what he said. And then the next day, my cousin texts me. And she's like, hey, was this you? It was on the front of CNN. My name with my shield upside
They
down.
probably ate that up.
Dude, my cousin's like, is this you, Greg? I'm like, you know, why are you asking me that? You know that was me. I don't even have a helmet on. I'm just standing out there with an upside down shield like this.
That's awesome.
Of course you know that was me. Just getting text message after text message. I was the front page of CNN talking about the riots. I was like, oh, man. But the night after they decided not to indict Mike Brown, we're driving the bus up 44 to that exit because we were at the staging point for the city, which was west of there, in case they want to use it again. And we're at the staging point of the city, so we're on the highway and we're heading east on the highway, and they're blocking the highway, and cars are at a standstill. And then I look up, and I'm sure it was 500, 1,000 people, but it felt like 10,000.
Right.
That you stare at, and I'm just like, these are how these poor bastards felt at the Alamo.
Yeah.
I have no clue what's
Yeah.
going on. This is what these poor bastards felt like at the Alamo. And you clear them all off the highway, and it is what it is. And then we went up, and after a while, looting and people breaking into pawn shops and craziness, and people setting police cars on fire and all the other stuff that happened that night. They started shooting off tear gas. I was with a guy who's got 22, 23 years on now, so he's got 6, 7 more than me on, and he's like choking and gagging, and he's got his gas mask on, and I'm like, wow, how are you gagging with gas mask on? And then I look, he's got a balaclava on, so there's no seal, like everything's seeping in.
Yeah, he doesn't have
this
the good
gas
seal.
mask might as well not be on. It might as well be in the trunk of his car. And then he's like, I'm like, dude, you got to take that off.
Yeah.
And then he looks at me dead serious. He's like, man, my baklava. I was like, well, your baklava? And it took me a second to realize that he didn't know the difference between a Greek pastry and his little black thing. And I was just like, oh, man. And he was just crying and coughing. And we took a bus back after the night. And being policemen, no one was smart enough to like put the windows down. And so everyone's breathing in each other's pepper spray. And that was bad. The George Floyd ones, there was only really one night that was bad during the George Floyd stuff.
Yeah.
But I remember being at the Colin area, and we were told to go, because I guess there was a bunch of stuff going on at the Colin area downtown. But by the time we got there, everyone was gone. And just hearing like rounds ping off the brick above my head.
Yeah.
And finally, like a supervisor being like, oh, we should move.
Oh, that's enough. Let's go.
Yeah, like we're just standing here blocking something that doesn't need to be blocked. I'm just like, oh yeah, that's a good call. Because the other funny part about the George Floyd ones was because the way they break it down is there's like 6 CDT teams. And I was on like the 6th one, and I honestly think they forgot we were there. Like they honestly forgot to deploy us because like crazy stuff was going on for 4 or 5 hours.
And you guys were just
We were just sitting at the station. And like, because no one wanted to ask. Like,
Yeah.
no one wanted to be like, you need us somewhere? Like,
Hey.
yeah, like, that sounds terrible. Can I be a part of that? No one was asking that question. Everyone's like, I'll just eat this bratwurst.
Yeah.
Like, this
Yeah.
bratwurst that's being cooked looks a lot more fun than being with overturned cars that are on fire.
What about, did you do any of the Stockley
I've been,
stuff?
yeah, I was there for Stockley too. I was there for,
Yeah.
we'll call it the mass arrests. I don't know. I was sued for that one. I don't know what I'm allowed to say.
Yeah.
The mass detention of that one. And it was so poorly organized.
Yeah.
Like, there was a guy for that one. And first of all, I don't understand how everyone knew that was going to be bad. Everyone knew it. The climate was bad for it. And, like, it was just an ugly incident. Like, and of all the things that have occurred, probably the most outrage rightfully placed at the right people. And I never was really, like, I understood the outrage.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't understand how, like they were legitimately surprised that there was an attack, like, that stuff was going on in the Central West End.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
there's multiple people who are assigned to this. We didn't think that this might be going on.
Right.
And there was one guy who was no longer on the department. And he was on vacation. That's what makes this even funnier. But he was on the Manning chart 3 different times. So he had 3 separate supervisors looking for him. And he was on vacation. Like,
Oh my.
so all these, like, so now he's being bothered by, like,
Yeah.
his set of supervisors and these 3 sets of supervisors and their supervisors wondering where he's at. And this dude's like, I'm just trying to sit on the beach. But I mean, like, that's just an example of, like, how poorly planned and thought through it was. Because you're sitting there and you're like, how don't we realize the same person's name's on this detail 3 times? Like,
Yeah.
shouldn't we have used Excel and just moved him over once? I mean, like, I appreciate how they went above and beyond for all that and got us extra equipment and stuff like that for that round of. But it seemed like the actual, like, planning of it, we had a lot of cool equipment, but we had absolutely no plan. Where it seems like we probably should have had a plan and then used that really cool equipment.
Yeah.
Or, like, if we could choose between, like, a really good plan.
Yeah.
At one point at the Stockley thing, the verdict was going on, and we were in buses directly across the street from the police academy.
Okay.
But there's 90 people on these buses with riot gear on. Like, there's nowhere to move.
Yeah.
So now people are getting off to, like, smoke and just stretch your legs. And now this mob of people's walking towards you because they had no clue you're on these buses. So we created our own riot. I don't know why we got on the buses. We were sitting in the police academy parking garage across the street. Why did we just get on the bus?
Yeah.
And now they're shaking the buses, throwing bricks through the buses. Where if we were just in our initial place, like, they'd be walking the streets, but who cares? Like, everyone has a right to protest, and you know, you have to protect their rights, and you have to protect them while they're doing their rights. You know, but, like, now I've got Nick Cannon throwing fucking stones through a bus window I'm on. What did I ever do to Nick Cannon? Because I watched Nick Cannon do that. Don't you have, like, 45 kids to parent? I'm just like, how did this happen to where, like, because a detective who I think's in sex crimes, he might be in Dart now, was sitting across from us And I'm staring out his window and I'm talking to him and I'm just like, man, this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
This is a terrible idea.
Yep.
We're creating this situation.
Yeah.
We could have just been inside. Like, I understand. Or if we're going to be like mobile like that in the van, like why aren't we going off Shoto like 9 blocks from here to where like they're not going to walk?
Yeah. not
We're a block and a half from
not
the,
right smack dab in the middle of everything. Yeah.
And like finally Joe Hill, who's a lieutenant now, he was a sergeant at the time. And a great guy. But Joe, we're trying to figure out if we should get on or off this bus because they're throwing rocks through it. And they're shaking the bus. Like, the bus is shaking. It feels like it's going to tip over.
Right.
And Joe finally goes, first one to make a decision all day. And he's just like, let's get off the bus, guys.
Thank the Lord.
Like, we had to be told to get off the bus.
Yeah.
But it was just a series of things, just one after another, where it was... And it seemed like everything that they put into it was... to get us all this cool stuff and to get us all this cool equipment to keep us safe.
Yeah.
We're maybe and it's all appreciated, and the police foundation's great, and I really appreciate all those people going to bat for us to do all that, and it was needed, and people did get hurt, and there's lots of people got hit the last time with, but you know what would have been even better? A plan.
But you know, you guys look cool being out there, so that's all that matters.
Yeah. As the bus is tipping over because Nick Cannon's mad. It was so ridiculous. I'm looking at this thing and Nick Cannon's standing on stuff, throwing things at our bus. And I'm like, did Nick Cannon really just bust out a window? Like, how's my life become it to where like the guy who Eminem makes fun of and is on an MTV show is now throwing rocks at me? How did I get to this point in my life? Where did I go wrong?
Right.
Like, there's like soul searching going on as you're like doing this. Like this.
Yeah.
This is just ridiculous.
Well, to wrap it up, is there anything else you want to add?
I don't know. What do people say here? I don't know.
Yeah, no, typically...
Do I try to sell t-shirts here now or something? Like,
buy our brand.
Yeah. Is this like well, it's Thanksgiving week and Colin couldn't find anyone else, so he called Greg.
Back pocket. No, typically I just say, you know, if there's anything that you could say and there was a younger officer listening to this podcast tomorrow, what would you say to them?
If there's a younger officer listening to this podcast tomorrow, what's the most important part of staying sane and the little bit of sanity I have left is a work-life balance.
Yeah.
And it's important to have police friends because there's times where you talk about situations you're in and the only people in the world who will ever get it are your police friends.
Yeah.
And you really start to look down at other people when they tell you their problems at work.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh yeah, well, I'm waiting to see if we're going to get indicted.
Yeah.
I'm still supposed to go about my job.
Yeah.
I did nothing wrong, by the way. You know, so you need people you could trust who are level-headed. But you also need to find some sort of spirituality, whether it's Buddha or Catholicism or whatever. Find it.
Something to believe in.
And like you also need other hobbies. Like you need people to go play basketball with. Like I've gotten overly involved in my daughter's basketball career. And it's I'm not living through her. But it's definitely an outlet for me. It's a hobby for me taking her places. And like I've become really like both of my kids compete at a pretty high level of athletics, one wrestling and jiu-jitsu and the other basketball. But like the best part of all that is the car rides and just sitting down there afterwards. And like it might be frustrating because you want to sleep or do other stuff, but that's the special time, like when it's just you and the one other person. just try to find as much of a balance as you can. Don't make, because why there's a suicide rate and all that stuff is, I've got a really good friend at work. I won't say his name because he might actually listen. But he lets so much of this other people's decisions, who don't think twice about these decisions. They're the same people that put that guy's name on a worksheet 3 times because they don't give a shit. Double check their work because it doesn't actually affect them.
Yeah.
He lets so much of their decision making affect him to where it upsets him and it angers him.
Yeah.
And like, none of that's going to bother me. You know, like, that just none of that's going to bother me.
Yeah.
Like, so don't let other people's decisions
influence,
affect your happiness.
Yeah.
You know, you create your own happiness in life.
Right.
As much or as little as you put into it, that's what you're going to get out of it.
Right.
You know, I've got anxiety super bad. I'm a walking pit of anxiety. But like, I can't control what other people do. And like I won't find happiness in that. And like, I've learned later in life, like, I'm never going to be happy at a job. There's never going to be a job where I'm going to be like, man, I can't wait to not be at home for 14 hours. There's not a job anywhere where that's, but what my job does do is when my son had an autism diagnosis and was never supposed to speak, it did allow me to be at every one of his therapies to make sure he got there, to make sure he didn't miss anything. Because it's just a small part of your life, man. And when you're a young or new policeman and you got this messed up schedule and other people are your age and they also have a messed up schedule. So it's real easy to go out and like, oh, I got off work at 2. I don't have anything to do till 6 tomorrow night. Let's go get drunk.
Yeah.
And there's time for that and it's fun and you should do it. But like, you can't make it a lifestyle where that's the only thing you surround yourself with.
That's it. Yeah.
You know, once or twice a week, you absolutely should do that. It helps talking about stuff.
Yeah.
All that. But like, it's important to have people who are your friends who have other common interests with. If that's the only way you're ever going to find any sort of happiness.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out what you want from the job.
Yeah.
Like, if the job's what makes you happy, let me tell you something. The people making decisions don't give a shit about your happiness.
It's very true.
They're running an organization. They're not running Greg Schaefer's happiness factory. They're running an organization to try to make sure the organization runs well, and they're looking out for themselves. Like, we had the same person in 3 different lines who's on vacation. Like, that's.
Yeah.
And it's not because the people doing it are bad people. It's just because there's not enough attention to detail. The stuff that matters to me doesn't matter to them.
No.
And it shouldn't. They have a different organizational view.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Greg, thanks for coming on.
Always, buddy.
It was great.
I doubt it.
No, I really enjoyed it. It was good.